Family put my name on my sister's mortgage, $480,000 of debt signed in my handwriting that wasn't mine. At dinner, my mom finally said it out loud. "It's your duty. Family sacrifices." They thought I'd stay quiet like always. I said yes, but only because I had already taken everything back. I'm Emily Hart, and this is the story of how my own family forged my name, buried me in debt, and never saw the trap I set waiting for them. I'm about to share something close to my heart. But before I do, can you say hi in the comments or tell me where you're from? I love hearing how far my story reached. It's always good to know I'm not alone in this. Thank you. And now let me tell you everything. And if my story moves you, please subscribe to this channel. It helps me share these moments with more people who might need to hear them. I was stirring honey into my tea when the phone lit up private number. I nearly let it roll to voicemail, but something in my gut said, "Pick up." "This is Derek with Summit Lending," a tight voice said, calling about the missed payment on the Maple Drive property. I stared out my Portland window at the pale afternoon steam fogging the glass. "I don't own a property," I said. Papers rustled on his end. "You're listed as co-borrower with a Lauren Hart. We've got 2 delinquencies and fees accruing." The name hit like cold water up the spine. Lauren, my sister. He read a number that didn't sound real until it was $480,000. He kept talking late charges, credit risk default clock, while my mind slid through holidays, errands, polite family lies. When I finally hung up, the tea had gone cold and sweet in my hand. Something was wrong in a way that had my pulse steady instead of wild. Steady is how I get when the ground drops. By dawn, I was on a flight to Phoenix. Summit's lobby smelled like toner and tired coffee, all frosted glass and staged potted plants. At the window, a woman named Erin smiled with the bland warmth of someone trained by policy. "If you're a co-borrower, I can show you the file." She tapped. The screen snapped open to a digital binder with my name where it didn't belong. "Here's the supplemental," she said, turning the monitor toward me. "Your name added after closing. Initials here, signature there, dated April 22nd. The signature looked like mine at a glance, and then not at all. My Y's don't climb that high, and I never abbreviate my middle name on anything that matters. This one did both. A good imitation is still an admission. "Who notarized this?" I asked. Erin clicked to a stamp that made my stomach dip. "Howard Klein Commission, expiring in days from the date on the page, as if the ink had raced the clock." I asked to see the full physical file. Because I was on the loan, she had to comply. For 20 minutes I paged through copies, the addendum, the notary acknowledgement with an all-purpose seal. A fuzzy scan line across the bottom edge, like it had been fed through a home scanner. I took photos of the notary page, the date, the address on the deed of trust, Maple Drive, Phoenix, the same townhouse Lauren had paraded at Christmas hand on the quartz island, like she owned the sun. "What about servicing?" I asked. "I heard it was sold off." Erin shook her head. "No transfer on this one. We still hold it." A tiny controlled exhale left me. If they held it, they could be negotiated with. If they could be negotiated with, control wasn't a fantasy, it was a path. I signed the visitor log and stepped back into the hard light of the parking lot. It wasn't just paper. It was a hazard wired directly into my name. A weight hung on my credit profile, a fuse burning toward a detonation I hadn't lit. My lock screen blinked awake when I checked the time. The photo there hadn't changed. Christmas in Austin. Lauren beaming in that sand-colored blazer, our mother's hand hovering over a platter as if she'd set the entire table and the entire future. In the corner of the frame, a folder of my tax documents sat on the kitchen counter where I'd stupidly dropped them on Dad's birthday week. I could see the manila edge like a breadcrumb left for wolves. I sat in the rental car and typed Howard Klein Notary into my phone. The address pinged a small strip mall a few blocks from my parents' subdivision wedged between a nail salon and a dry cleaner. Nothing about it was surprising except how close it sat to where I'd left my guard down. I let my thumbs hover over my mother's contact and then set the phone face down. There would be no yelling, no porch confrontations, no recorded blow-ups. If they wanted to play with paper, I would answer with paper. When I finally started the engine, the sun had slipped toward evening, and I drove away with the quiet sort of resolve that feels like a verdict you sign before you serve it. My parents' house in the Austin suburbs always smells like vanilla candles and furniture polish, like staged comfort. The framed photos line the hallway. Baptisms, graduations, holiday sweaters, versions of us smoothed and grinning. Mom opened the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Emily," she sang, ushering me in. I was just about to make tea. Dad Robert drifted in behind her, rubbing his shoulder already mid-sentence about his physical therapy. I waded through the small talk that tried to pretend the floor wasn't tilting. Then I set my keys on the counter and asked the question without sugar. "Why is my name on Lauren's mortgage?" Mom Margaret blinked as if surprised I'd come straight to the point. "It's paperwork," she said, with the same tone she used when I was 10 and left my jacket at school. "You're good with money. Of course you'd help." Dad cleared his throat and looked at a point over my shoulder. "Lauren needed a boost, that's all. A boost like you slip a shoulder under someone and help them up a step, not forge your daughter's name and shackle her to a $500,000 debt." From the doorway of Dad's office, I could see the new printer scanner setup humming quietly, a fresh strip of tape still sticky on the scanner lid. The output tray had a sheet half printed on it, a ghostly black and white of a signature line my name condensed into a version I never use, middle initial clipped instead of spelled. On the built-in shelves sat a Christmas folder still banded in elastic. I pulled the elastic down and slid out a card with a pre-printed message. "Thank you for always handling the paperwork for the family." No handwriting, just a script font, and the assumption baked right in. It felt less like gratitude and more like doctrine. "Where did you have it notarized?" I asked, casual, like we were swapping recipes. Mom's smile went too bright. "At a little office by the cleaners. Howard something. He does everything around here." She said it like a joke, as if the punchline might spare her. I put the folder back exactly as I found it. "I'm going to take a drive," I said. "I won't be long." Howard Klein's office was a narrow slot with a bell that announced me to a room of faded diplomas and a whining fluorescent. The man behind the desk wore a tie that had seen better weeks. He peered at me over bifocals. "What can I do for you?" "You notarized a supplemental that added my name to a deed of trust," I said, laying my driver's license on the counter. "I'd like to see your journal entry for that day." He frowned, thinking. "Power of attorney?" "No," I said. "Addendum, April 22nd. He thumbed through a fat ledger with the slow care of habit and turned the book so I could see date time a scroll for the type of document, and under ID presented a state ID number next to a grainy photocopy clipped to the page-a-face that wasn't mine. The line for personal appearance, "Did signer appear before you had been scratched," and rewritten, the kind of correction you make when you realize procedure isn't a suggestion. The stamp on his desk had a commission date on its belly that gave away the rest. It was set to expire within the week of the signature. "I'll need a certified copy of this page," I said. He hesitated, then nodded. "There's a fee. I paid it. I took photos too, the way you back up a backup when the truth matters." "Do you remember who brought the documents in?" I asked, still polite. Vaguely, he said a woman said her son couldn't make it in. Said she had his authorization. The air in that little office felt thin. Authorization. It's a word that can feel legitimate until you put your hand on it and realize it's air. At the Maricopa County Records Room the next morning, the clerk slid thick books toward me and pointed to a terminal where I could search by parcel. I ran the chain of title on Maple Drive, watched the screen populate with deeds and liens, then found the addendum my name grafted to a loan I never consented to stamped and accepted. The same week we'd celebrated Dad's birthday, and I'd left a manila folder on their kitchen counter. I printed the acceptance slips, the timestamps, the document numbers. I asked for the payment log from the servicer and got what they could give 2 missed payments, and then a mysterious cure someone had pushed money in from another account to make the delinquency less obvious. If I had to guess, it was Dad paying with a card and a prayer, hoping to buy time until I was either too exhausted to fight or too conditioned to say no. By the time I left the clerk's counter, the contents of my backpack were a checklist. I could touch certified scans from the notary journal and his aging seal the addendum that tried to turn forgery into fate, proof of the delinquency, and the bandage payment that kept the lie alive a little longer. Photographs of the new home scanner and the Christmas card that thanked me for being a permanent solution. I texted a number my colleague had given me months ago and asked for an appointment with a property lawyer named Andrew Collins. His reply came back fast. "Tomorrow afternoon, Portland, bring everything." On my way to the car, I cut across the old street where Mr. Whitman was trimming a hedge, the same man who'd waved at us from his porch for 20 years. He shaded his eyes and called my name like he was relieved to attach it to a real person. "Your mom had me carry in a stack of papers the night of your dad's birthday," he said, as if confessing a small sin. "Said the light was better in the living room for photos." He mimed holding a phone over a desk. She seemed in a hurry. I thanked him and kept walking, the weight of the files suddenly heavier on my shoulder. It wasn't just that they'd used me. It was how calmly the whole neighborhood had been drafted to help. Back in the car, I pressed my palm to the folder until the edges bit. There are a dozen ways to blow up a family. I could have chosen any of them. I could have shouted in the kitchen, hurled the proof on the table, demanded apologies. They no longer had the currency to pay. Instead, I drove in silence, watched the sun slide along the hood, and let the plan that had been forming since Aaron turned that monitor toward me settle into place. If they thought paper could make me theirs, they were about to learn what paper can do when it belongs to me. Dinner at my parents' house looked the way it always did when Mom Margaret wanted to stage normalcy. The table was covered with a plaid cloth candles burning low beside the roasted chicken that filled the room with rosemary. Lauren showed up in athleisure that probably cost more than my entire suit latte in one hand, her phone in the other, scrolling like nothing in the world could bother her. I sat down, not touching the food waiting. I didn't have to wait long. Mom slid the basket of bread toward me, her eyes catching mine with that softness that had always been more performance than affection. "It's your duty," she said finally, voice calm, like she was explaining the weather. "Family sacrifices." The words dropped heavy, like they'd been rehearsed. "Dad." Robert cleared his throat, still looking anywhere but me. "We all have to look out for each other. That's what families do." I put my fork down. I didn't sign anything I said, and duty only exists when there's consent. You don't get to choose my sacrifices. Lauren laughed through her nose, not even glancing up from her phone. "You already promised Emily. Don't act like you didn't. You always take care of me. Don't start breaking promises now." I leaned back studying them, all the roast chicken steaming like some centerpiece of togetherness we'd never really had. My phone buzzed on the table, a notification lighting up from Lauren's Instagram. I clicked it open and froze. Her post from Christmas smug smile over her new countertops, and in the corner of the reflection on the glass cabinet was the blurred but legible edge of a closing disclosure. My last name printed bold and black. They hadn't even been careful. They'd bragged right over the evidence. Dad's iPad dinged next to the notification flashing across the screen before he could hide it. Refi projection. They were already planning to refinance, counting on my credit as leverage. They hadn't just stolen my name, they were building new debts on the back of it. Mom reached for her glass of wine too quickly and muttered, "We already have your signature copy from your folder. What's the difference?" She caught herself, lips pinching tight, but the admission hung in the air like smoke. I pressed record on my phone screen dark, letting it capture every word. I didn't shout, didn't accuse, I didn't even stand. "Okay," I said finally, voice even. "Let me see what I can arrange." I made it sound like surrender, like the son they could still use. Their shoulders eased, Lauren smirking again, certain I was back in my role. But as soon as I was in my car, I opened my email. A new message from Andrew Collins waited. "We can buy the loan discounted since it's already delinquent. If you want to be the creditor, we need a clean LLC." I stared at the screen. The house behind me glowing with candlelight, a staged photograph of warmth and family that no longer fooled me. I typed 2 words back. "Let's start." The mirror showed my face steady cold. From now on, I wasn't their shield. I was holding the blade. Andrew Collins' office in Portland was small paneled in old wood, the kind of space that smelled like paper and dust but hummed with precision. His desk was stacked with case files, the window overlooking a half-empty parking lot. He shook my hand like we'd known each other for years, then sat back and waited for me to unload everything. I spread out my photos, my scans, the recording from dinner. He listened in silence, nodding, occasionally humming as though solving a crossword. When I finished, he leaned forward. "You've got options," he said. "You can press charges. Fraud, forgery, maybe conspiracy. That'll get them arrested. Or," he tapped the addendum with his pen, "you can take the knife they meant for you and turn it around. Buy the debt, hold the lien, become the one they answer to." "I don't want them jailed," I said. My voice surprised me with how flat it was. "I want control." Andrew smiled, not kindly, but knowingly. "Here's what we do. The bank is restless. They'd unload this note for 70 cents on the dollar. You buy it through a new LLC clean shell, no family name attached. Suddenly you're the creditor and they'll never see it coming." He slid the notary record back toward me. "See this? Your name was added in a different ink. The spacing's wrong. Someone inside the bank either looked the other way or greased the skids. That makes the whole addendum vulnerable if contested. It's leverage." As if on cue, my phone buzzed. An email from Mr. Whitman, the neighbor. He wrote that he remembered Dad Robert carrying a notary-stamped paper back from the birthday party the week my documents had gone missing. Whitman hadn't thought much of it then, but now it clicked. Dad had been the courier of my forged signature. Andrew tapped the table. "This isn't about shouting or slamming doors. This is chess. And if you want to win, silence is your queen. Don't tell them anything. Let them keep stumbling. Every missed payment digs the hole deeper. You don't warn them. You let them hang themselves with the rope they thought they tied around you." The cafe across from the courthouse buzzed with noise when we met the next day to finalize. My laptop opened, Andrew guiding my cursor through the forms we built. Silver Creek LLC line by line, articles of organization, registered agent, bank account, seated. The paperwork clicked into place faster than I expected, like a house snapping together from prefabricated walls. By the end of the week, the entity existed in the eyes of the state. When I signed the last page, Andrew capped his pen and pushed the folder toward me. "Congratulations. You're no longer a victim. You're their creditor." Walking out to my car, I caught my reflection in the glass. For the first time since the call from Summit Lending, I didn't see someone trapped. I saw someone sharpening silence into a weapon. The streetlight flickered overhead, and I realized I wasn't waiting for rescue anymore. I was the one building the trap, and they'd never hear it close until it was too late. The Summit Capital headquarters in Phoenix was all glass and steel, a place where the air conditioning hummed too cold and the walls echoed with rehearsed pleasantries. I sat across from Andrew and the bank's regional director, a man whose tie was pulled so tight it looked like it might cut off his air supply. A projector displayed spreadsheets, columns of numbers highlighted in red interest rates, stacked like bricks ready to fall. Andrew handled most of the talking, his tone calm, but edged with authority. "The account is already 2 months delinquent," he said, pointing to the screen. "Your risk exposure grows every day you hold it. My client is prepared to close it out immediately. Cash on the table." The director folded his hands, weighing the silence before naming the number. 340.70 on the dollar. It was my turn. I leaned forward, pen ready. Silver Creek LLC will assume the debt in full. Effective today. The contract slid across the polished table. My name was nowhere on the entity, only the clean shield of the company we had built. I signed. The director countersigned. Just like that, the trap had teeth. Outside, the Arizona sun glared against the windows, the brightness almost mocking the shadows I carried. I had gone from a person shackled by forged ink to the creditor they would soon fear. My family had no idea that the bank they thought they could manipulate was gone, replaced by me. In the hallway, a junior loan officer whispered as he handed me copies. Funny thing, he said, almost like gossip. Your sister called last week asking for an extension. Said her brother would handle it, that you'd always handled it. He grinned as though it were trivial. I slipped the papers into my folder without a word. Back at the hotel, Andrew dropped a printed email in front of me. From internal records, he explained it showed a credit card payment from my father, just enough to patch the overdue interest for the previous month. A desperate gesture to keep the wolves from the door, but it only confirmed what I already knew. They were scrambling to cover their tracks. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Margaret. Come home to Austin this weekend. We need to talk as a family. The words dripped with that same old scripta meeting staged to corner me into submission to play the role I had outgrown. I didn't answer. Later, I pulled up market reports on Lauren's neighborhood. Prices had dipped. Listings lingered buyers hesitant. Her townhouse was underwater. No chance of a profitable sale. She was cornered, and I was the one holding the leash. That night, in the quiet of the hotel room, I placed the signed agreement on the desk and stared at it under the lamp. The ink was barely dry, but the weight of it was undeniable. They had tried to trap me with a forgery, and now the trap belonged to me. I whispered it to the empty room as though the walls needed to hear it. They took my name to bind me. Now my name holds the reins. I opened my laptop, started drafting an email to Lauren. The subject line was blank. The body only half a sentence. From this moment forward, the debt you owe is to me. I didn't hit send. Not yet. Timing would be everything. I signed the default notice on Silver Creek letterhead with the same calm I'd once used to balance spreadsheets. It felt mechanical, precise, the way you tighten a knot knowing someone else will be caught in it. Andrew faxed the documents, filed them electronically, and within hours the wheels began to turn. A week passed. My phone became a hive of unanswered calls. First Mom. Margaret, her number flashing again and again. Then Dad Robert, and finally Lauren, who left a voicemail late at night. Her voice was sharp, frantic. Emily, something's wrong with the mortgage company. I think they sold the loan. Can you check you're good at this, please? She didn't even say my name with warmth, just as if I were still a service she could summon. I didn't reply. When Mom finally reached me, her tone was brittle but still layered with that same entitlement. Don't be angry. We just need a little time. You've always been the one to sacrifice for us. This is no different. She wanted to turn my silence into a weapon against me to make me feel guilty for what she had done. Dad sent an email next. No greeting, no warmth, just formal language. We need you to confirm whether the loan has been transferred. Please advise. Signed, Robert Hart. It read less like a father and more like a bureaucrat writing to his subordinate. I closed it without answering. Through Andrew, I discovered Lauren had already tried to list the townhouse with a real estate agent. The listing never made it past preliminary review because Silver Creek LLC held the lien. She was scrambling, pretending control, not realizing the rug had already been pulled out from under her. Andrew cautioned me when we met at the hotel. They think the bank still owns the debt. Let them keep believing that. Every delay, every mistake, it only deepens your position. Do not let them know you're Silver Creek. Not yet. That night, I printed a copy of the default notice and slid it into my notebook, the paper thick and final beneath my fingers. In the bathroom mirror, I studied my reflection. For years, I had been the silent one, the dependable one, the daughter who carried weight without complaint. They had built their confidence on that silence, certain it meant obedience. But now the silence was mine to wield. "They think it'll save them," I said softly to the woman in the glass. But this time am the one holding the blade. The house in Austin was lit up like Christmas, every lamp blazing, every piece of silver polished until it shone. The table was set with roasted chicken glistening in rosemary wine glasses catching the light and napkins folded too perfectly. It was theater, and I was the only one in the audience who knew the script. I walked in with nothing more than a thin manila envelope in my hand, but the weight of it dragged the air behind me. Mom Margaret was the first to greet me. Her smile stretched wide, the kind of smile meant for strangers at church. "Emily, you're just in time," she said, pulling out my chair like she could still control the story. "Dad," Robert muttered a hello, already retreating into silence. Lauren leaned against her chair in designer leggings, latte in hand, smirking as if she'd already won. We ate in brittle politeness. Forks clinked against porcelain candles, sputtered, and not a single word felt real. Then I set the envelope on the table. The sound of paper on wood was louder than anything else that night. "Here are the updated documents," I said. Dad opened it, eyes darting back and forth, lips moving as he read. Mom's practiced smile was gone in an instant. Lauren froze her nails, tapping the stem of her wine glass. "You have 3 choices," I said clearly, voice steady. "Pay the debt in full, vacate the house in 30 days, or contest it in court." Lauren shot to her feet, her chair scraping hard against the floor. "You wouldn't dare. You don't betray your own family." "I didn't betray anyone," I answered calmly. "I signed it properly. You forged mine." Dad finally spoke, voice low, cracking. "We were planning to refinance. We just needed your signature." The words were meant to sound rational, but they landed like confession. Mom leaned forward, her tone sharp with mockery. "You always thought you were clever, but this family survives because some of us understand sacrifice." She made the words sound noble, as though coercion could be repackaged as love. I slid another sheet across the table. "There's a 4th option. Sign the transfer, and I'll rent 1 room back to you at market rate." The silence that followed was heavier than the chicken cooling between us. I pushed back my chair and stood. "This isn't family anymore. This is business." Lauren's voice cracked into a scream. "You always thought you were better than us." "No," I said, steady as stone. "I thought I was just the tool you could use, but the tool is now the owner." The air was thick, heavy with smoke from extinguished candles, the roast cooling wine half drunk. Nobody moved, the whole room waiting for someone to break first. I reached into my bag again and laid down another folder, this one thicker, bound with clips. "You want to take this to court?" I asked. "Then read what you'll be up against." Inside were copies of everything, the forged signature, the notary's journal, the recordings of our conversations. I had lined up every brick in the wall they'd built around me, but now the wall was theirs to scale. Mom's voice rose, raw, almost a sob. "You're our blood, Emily. You can't do this to us. Blood doesn't give you the right to turn me into a debtor," I said. My voice was calm, but each word cut through the room. Lauren lunged across the table, grabbing for the folder. "You can't," she hissed. But I let her pull it close because it didn't matter. Every page had already been scanned, filed, emailed to Andrew. She was clawing at ghosts. Dad's head sank into his hands. "I only wanted to save her," he whispered. His first admission, his first crack. But his words meant to excuse only proved his part in it. Mom tried again, voice trembling but sharp. "Let's call it what it is, a family loan. Well, forget the paperwork, just like we always do." I leaned forward. "Not this time. No more empty promises. Only what's legal. Only what's binding." I tapped the table twice a signal. The front door opened, and the sound of measured footsteps filled the hallway. Andrew walked in first, followed by a notary with a briefcase. They set it on the table, flipping latches, pulling out fresh contracts. The dining room transformed, just like that, from a family set piece into a boardroom. The candles flickered as I stood. From this moment on, the Maple Drive house belongs to Silver Creek, LLC. Your names are off the deed. This account is closed. The words hung in the silence, broken only by the scrape of chairs and the scratch of a pen. Nobody argued. Nobody shouted. The fight had gone out of them. All that was left was the sound of signatures binding a new reality and the legs of chairs dragging against hardwood as they shifted under the weight of what they had lost. I looked at each of them once long enough for the truth to sink in, and then I gathered the papers into the briefcase. The ledger was balanced. The suture was sewn. The debt was done. The next morning, the courthouse in Maricopa County smelled like paper and cold metal, its tiled halls echoing every footstep. I walked beside Andrew carrying a case file so thick it left a ridge on my palm. In the records room, clerks moved like shadows between shelves. We sat at a long counter while Andrew spread out the evidence like a map-certified copies of the forged signature, the notary's journal entries, the recordings of my parents' admissions. One by one, the clerk stamped each document, logged it into the system, and confirmed the transfer of the Maple Drive mortgage into Silver Creek, LLC. On the screen in front of us, the words appeared final, not pending, not provisional, irreversible. Andrew slid the final page toward me. "This is it," he said. "From now on, there's no going back. You own the lien, and they can't touch it." I signed and felt something shift. Not triumph, not revenge, but a slow settling, like a scale tipping back to zero. Back in his office in Portland, we went over the documents again, making sure nothing had been missed. He marked off each item on his list title assignment, filed notice of default sent foreclosure timeline in place. When we finished, I opened my laptop and drafted an email to my parents and Lauren. Attached were PDF copies of the transfer confirmation and a formal 30-day notice to cure or vacate. I wrote only one line in the body. "This is now a matter of record." The call started within an hour. Lauren's voice tore through the speaker like metal. "You're a traitor, Emily. I'm going public with this. Everyone will know what you've done." I stared at the phone and then answered, my voice steady. "You can tell anyone anything, but the documents don't lie." I hung up. Later that afternoon, a letter arrived by overnight courier from Dad Robert. His handwriting, normally neat, slanted into apology. He admitted forging my name to save Lauren, but begged me to keep the house in her name to let this go quietly. The letter was not the appeal he thought it was. It was the last piece of evidence showing he had known exactly what he was doing. Mom Margaret tried a different angle, sending me a short email lined with nostalgia. "Whatever happens, you're still our daughter." I replied with one sentence. "A daughter is not a default debtor." Then I archived the thread. Andrew called with one more update. "A state training program on real estate fraud has requested your case file for its curriculum," he said. I shook my head. No cameras, no press. This isn't a performance. It's a correction. That evening, as I sat alone in my apartment, the folder lay closed on the table. For the first time since the phone call from Summit Lending, the air felt breathable. I wasn't elated. I was balanced like a ledger finally reconciled. The debt was closed. The townhouse on Maple Drive stood silent, its windows bare, the air inside echoing like a shell. I walked through the empty rooms one last time, my footsteps clicking on the hardwood Lauren had once bragged about. Sunlight poured in slantwise dust floating in beams like confetti after a parade no one wanted. In the kitchen, the counter where I had once seen my name reflected in Lauren's Instagram was wiped clean except for a single birthday card. Its printed words said, "We're proud of you, daughter." But there was no handwriting, no signature, just a mass-produced sentiment left behind like an aftertaste of everything that had happened. I took the card, folded it once, and placed it in my bag. Then I opened my laptop and filed the paperwork to rename Silver Creek LLC. From that moment on, it would be called the Hart Foundation, after my grandmother Evelyn Hart, the woman who taught me how to keep a checkbook balanced and an emergency bill tucked in a coat pocket. The woman my mother had edited out of family stories because she refused to be obedient. Every cent of rental income from the townhouse would go into a scholarship fund for first-generation finance students. It wasn't charity. It was reclamation value turned upright again. I stepped outside into the small yard and rolled a measuring wheel along the perimeter. Each click of the counter marked not just feet, but boundaries they had never given me, the ones I had to draw for myself. The grass brushed my ankles, and beyond the fence, the field opened wide, unclaimed and quiet. On my phone, I saw a screenshot of Lauren's latest post, a vague caption about betrayal with no names attached. I didn't respond. I saved it to the insurance folder with everything else. An hour later, an email arrived from Mom. Margaret empty, except for the subject line family. I left it unread. Some messages are better as artifacts than as conversations. Back in Portland, my new apartment smelled of paint and morning light. It was small, unpretentious, but mine. As I unpacked, I found a notebook of Evelyn's tucked in a box of old papers. Inside, written in her looping script, was a line I hadn't remembered. The strongest person isn't the one who shouts the loudest, but the one who sets their own terms. I closed the notebook and placed it on the windowsill beside a pot of basil it planted. Outside, the city moved at its own pace, and for the first time in months, I felt no urge to chase it. When I locked the Maple Drive townhouse door for the last time, I left the keys on the counter for the notary to collect. The house was empty, but I didn't feel empty leaving it. I looked out at the open field behind the fence, quiet, uncontrolled mine to walk away from. They had used my name to bind me. Now I used my name to draw the line. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like freedom, a life returned to its rightful owner. I wasn't the family's shield anymore. I was simply Emily Hart standing in my own light. No longer a tool, but the author of my own terms.